tobacco every day and ask for guidance from the spirits, from the creator, and listen. And that's usually one of the first things that I think of when I'm thinking about like healing, is learning to um, either be around and create the stick tobacco for my thank yous, the Mitigo Sema. Some of you have heard of that as Chan Shasha or Nisko Beamish, where you can make your own tobacco. Or some of you have heard from the farm raised tobacco. You have something that you raise. Usually that's a men's plant. The men raise it. A lot of the seeds that we use from Dream of Wild Health may be seeds that come from a certain area. And then we've had our elder man the last 7 years has been growing out our tobacco there. And that's the offering that you put down to say your thank yous each day. For me, part of my job is to teach the young ones about finding plants, knowing that each plant has its gift. And all these gifts that we're surrounded by are here in the plant world, on this earth, on Mother Earth, and she gives them so freely. So I go out now. Lately, it's been every day. I get a request from somebody for a particular plant. When you approach an elder, usually you would offer Sema tobacco if you're looking for particular plants for healing. Maybe your family has certain teachings. If you're not able to get out into the woods, maybe you can get some help from an elder to go with you to show you how to find that particular plant. And that is one thing we do at Dream Wild Health, is try to teach the kids how to identify certain plants, to go out there and find them, find out their gifts, so that they too can learn how to do that. One of the things that I'm hearing during this time is that this is a time for us to boost our immune systems. So one of the things we can do is to remember that this is all about clean air, clean water, clean food, and clean medicines. So for that, we need to be conscious of that, of the clean air, clean water, clean food, and clean medicines. So for me, what that means is going back to some of our old means of supporting our immune systems. What I've been hearing from some of the traditional folks that I'm familiar with, they're going back to some of those old spring cleaning techniques that our people use so frequently. Some of those techniques were to clean out one way or another to get our bodies strong, so that we have a way to address anything that might come to us in a challenging way. So I would encourage all of you to ask around to see what those plants were. Be very careful, because if you're working with those plants, those are usually really powerful plants. And you want to make sure that you do that in a good way and you're not harming yourself or anyone around you. But all the tribal folks that I know have traditional ways of doing that. I remember when I was younger, I was shocked that there was even a castor oil plant up there at Red Bee and Red Lake, that even the more non-traditional ways of doing spring cleaning were used that way. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about what's there right now as we look at plants. Every day, what grows up, it changes. And there's always different kinds of plants for picking, for giving their gift. Constantly. There's never a time where you go like, oh, nothing's ready, I'm done. So what I'm hearing people looking for right now are different plants that are specifically for strengthening the immune system. So thinking about that, about what you can do personally, like focus on eating those clean foods, Focus on making sure you get that clean water. Do what you can politically to try to assure that there's clean air. We see some of that right now happening when you look all over the world and you hear things like, oh my gosh, they're seeing fish and dolphins in Venice and Italy that were there because of all the human activity and pollution. So we're seeing some restoration that way, but we've got to stay on it, you know, make sure that we're not just going back to our old ways, because this is a chance to slow down and look at how we can change things in a good way. For me, one of those basic ways is prayer. Go out there every day, spend time with those plants, recognize those plants, see who they are, talk to them. You know, I know Jessica, who'll be visiting next, she and I talk about, well, do they talk back? Yes, they do. You know, it's just a matter of getting really quiet and hearing that, what you might call inspiration or in spirit, you know, of hearing what they have to say too. So lately around here, there's quite a few different plants that are just beginning to pop out. If you work with plants, you're going to start to recognize some of them even before they pop out of the ground. The roots are there, a lot of them. This is the time to pick the roots because they're real strong. You'll see that some of the plants have stored up their energy through the winter time, so they've got that and they're getting ready to send their shoots up. If that's not the case, you might want to wait a little longer before you go after those roots. In Ojibwe, you'd say the Ojibikun. Some people, when they hear that term Jibik, it means roots, but some people define that to be medicine because often the medicine was in the roots, but not necessarily. So pay attention to the moon cycles, what's going on, because when the moon is pulling the medicine to the tips of the plants, or when it's you can think of it as pushing down to the roots. That's what you might be seeing. There's many different kinds. So make sure that you're looking at the one you think you're looking at, or find some of your old ways of looking at plants to, or your old relatives that might know these things. Always go first with what your relatives say. If you have a grandma that says, we use this, that's the one to go to, you know. If not, you can speak to an elder, present tobacco, and try to find out some more. One of the ones that's coming up right now, and you can do so much with it. You can eat the greens. I know I've even made a pie out of it. In Ojibwe, it's called Ozawa Jibik. That just means yellow root. And if you cut it, you can see why it's called yellow root. So you can see right there that the root is very yellow. Looks like this. The root almost looks like a dried carrot. It's very common. This isn't, you know, if you're going to work with roots, you got to make sure you put down your tobacco, talk to that plant, offer it a gift. If you're going to be working with these plants every season, you go thank those plants, have a ceremony, go out to the woods, prepare what you're going to do, talk to them, because now we're working with them, but it's not about us, it's about them. They're the ones that have the power, not us. We're just here to walk with them and to learn from them. So I can smell this one's really strong. I use my nose a lot when I go out walking, but this one, you can see that it's real yellow. This one is used for a kidney cleanse and a liver cleanse. It's the green part comes up. You can, like I said, I made a pie out of it. You can eat it. It's real mucilaginous, so it helps do some internal cleansing. This one you don't want to overdo it. If you're going to make a tea out of it, you would dry it. You can see it's starting to dry right now. Then you would grind it. You can make a tea out of that for a liver cleanse and a kidney cleanse. That one, especially for people who are trying to detoxify from drugs, alcohol, that kind of thing. That's a good one. Some of those roots offer themselves up in a way so that we can do that to clean ourselves and help ourselves on that process of getting cleaner. Um, there's lots of foods as well. Uh, right now it's a little bit early yet for the inner bark of the white pine tree, Xinguac. So you can see that right here. That's going to help for sore throats. You can see that it looks like it's just a little piece. It's pretty milky, and often this is used in combinations. So it's a little bit early yet for these. When you start to see the new growth on the needles show up, that's what you're looking for. And talk to that tree. That tree has a lot of medicine. Never ever go around and girdle a tree. You take it like this, like strips. You don't ever want to go around because you're going to kill the tree if it can't bring its power back up. A lot of you may have been noticing that there's more and more evidence of how the trees, they help each other. University of British Columbia has been doing work to show that they were studying a birch tree and a balsam fir and how they are exchanging information all the time. Well, the birch tree would send betulin, its healing power, over to the fir tree, and then the fir would send food over to the birch tree. So they said, as you look at a tree and you see like an elder tree, a larger tree, it's sending gifts to all the little ones around it. So not just necessarily its babies, but to everybody, all the living plants. Those are our teachers right there. That's what we can do now too, is to think about, this is a time to share. This is a time to slow down, go back to our old ways, to think about. This is a time to see which young ones are willing to listen and take on these responsibilities, because not all of them are interested or know how to listen. So I know I've been feeling that way, or kind of noticing that some people are going to go one way and some people are going to go another way at this time, where we're kind of looking at those people who are looking towards making sure we have clean water, clean food, clean um, air, clean medicine, that those ones are shifting in that direction, while other ones are saying, oh no, I'm gonna go more towards being fearful, or just go online, or never be outside. So maybe just paying attention, because we want to make sure the ones that are capable of taking this in are staying with us and following us and following along with these old ways. Here's another one. I've been talking about boosting the immune system in different ways. And the plants that I'm talking about right here are like liver cleanse was the first one, with the curly dock. The second one was white pine for sore throats and elevating your vitamin C. The third one was the zugatagan, the chaga, for immune support. And of course, it's a cancer fighter. And then here, this is one that I just showed. We're going to be showing it on channel 11, but it's a harder one to find. This one is for breathing, and you can use it as a tea or as a inhalant. You burn it and inhale it. So there's medicines like that as well. So I don't do any of the modern like tinctures or anything like that. I don't know how to do that. I've always had elder ladies that show me how to do things. So I go to those elder ladies, and they are not making tinctures. They just show me how it was done old style. So the thing that I'm going to ask you to do is you see these things or think about these things, thank them. Make an offering. Maybe you're going to do a cloth offering. Usually there is a cloth offering, tobacco offering. Go out to the woods as far as you can and just spend some time listening and doing your thank yous to the plants, because they're giving us not only breath, but medicine and food as well. This one is called, in English, it's called cup plant, bibiguewenance. So little flutes, but that one is burned and inhaled. So that's one for your breathing system. So these are all things that kind of address what we're talking about right now with some of the physical illnesses. Another thing I want to mention is that what I've heard from some elders is the reason why this stuff can't be coughed up is because in our lungs, we have taken in too much plastics. We have taken in too much adulterants, pesticides, herbicides, that we can't cough it up. So that's why we're going to these old style ways of cleaning our body, the spring cleaning, and then doing more specific cleaning techniques, like for our lungs, our kidneys. This one right here is the Ojibwe name is Maingwake. It means it makes one a wolf because it draws in the spirit. It brings back your spirit from wherever it's going. If your spirit is being overcome by fear or obsession with the sickness, this one, you can make a tea out of it. You can burn it. It has all sorts of gifts for spiritual healing, to cleanse the air, to bring the spirit back. The animals know this one too. I don't know if some of you must know that the animals doctor themselves. So this is one they seek out because it has so much healing property. Maingwake is the Ojibwe name for it. It's a little early for gathering it now, so it's a little weak yet because it's not anywhere near coming out of the ground yet. I just picked this one a couple days ago, so it would be really mild. But it's one that's burned. It's one that you can make a tea out of it. In English, they call it Angelica. It's really particular. It needs to have clean water. It needs to have cold water. So the plants, if they don't get what they need, they can't give their gift. That's really important. If they don't get clean water, clean soil, clean air, they're not, or clean food, they can't heal us. So as you hear people say, GMO, herbicides, pesticides, kill off all the insects, we're not going to have food. We're not going to have medicines. The woods won't be able to give us their gifts anymore because they won't be able to produce their medicines. So what I said before responds to that, is reflected in that they want to give their gifts. And if we don't thank them, if we don't recognize them, if we're too busy going, well, I'm just going to take some old pill a doctor gave me, they're going to leave us. They're going to say, well, I'm not getting fresh air. I'm not getting clean water. I'm not getting clean soil. I'm not getting what I need to give my gift. So I'm just going to leave. And that shows up with the domesticated plants. In Ojibwe, you hear the awasiag, the wild ones, the awakanag, the enslaved ones. The enslaved ones are like the corn, beans, squash, but they can give their gift. If we made a contract with them that we were going to provide them with what they needed to give their gift of food. Well, when we don't do that, when we do the GMO and we do the pesticides, herbicides, when we kill off the insects, these domesticated ones, they can't give their gift either. So we have to be the voice for them. That's why this is so, so important, to notice them, to thank them, to know that these powerful plants are out there, to stand up for them, to be the voice of them to other humans, because other humans, they're just going to say, oh, it's green. It's a green thing, and not know that there's these powerful, powerful gifts and medicines out there. Normally, I would never talk like this, you know, like share these medicines, but I want to share this because this is a time that's critical, that people need to rethink their connection to the plant world, to the creator, to Mother Earth. We need to stand up and really see what is our way here. Are we going to choose to be human, or are we going to choose to be something else, which might be part plastic, GMO, something else? You know, it's a time when we're being asked to choose. So what that elder said years ago, was that as we do this, as we're as we go through this world, if we ignored our elders, they go away. And what she meant was not just the humans, not just the animals, but also the plant world, because the plant world are our elders. So thank them, be with them, spend time with them. They want to give their gift. They're so generous, just like Mother Earth is so generous. Despite what we've done, she still keeps giving to us. The creator keeps giving to us so freely. So we've got to put down our thank yous. If we want things to come closer to us, they're going to listen. If we do our thank yous, put them out there. Just, it's not a lot to ask. Spend time with those plants, thank them, put your tobacco down, learn about them, see what their gifts are, walk in the woods, breathe that good clean air that's out there if you can find it. Learn what you can from your elders. Maybe right now you're in a apartment complex and you're far away from any clean woods. Start to learn from your elders then. There's elders around too that need you and can give you help. So those are some of the teachings that I want to share today. I know there's quite a few other plants too. I know lately there's been different ones that are being requested because of the challenges right now. I know that some of them have been asking for this one right here that's ready for picking. Quite a few, some of the elder ones have been asking for making what we call Minigan. If you translated it, it's a good thing. These buds, you can use them, you boil them up. You can put them in boiled bear fat for making a salve for open sores, but that balm, that smell helps your lungs, helps your throat. So maybe you're not feeling so good, and this is a way to kind of address that, is to use some of those medicines that are burned and can soothe the throat, can soothe the lungs. I know I only have a couple of minutes left right now, so I want to make sure all of you are paying attention to some of the things that I'm saying. So as we're coming in to fight this, what appears to be a flu, you know, there's lots of things, lots of plants that are used for fevers. Some of our old plants aren't what you would call tasty. So I know some of you have heard about using the outer bark of the aspen trees. I know that is one that we've used for years. You don't have to necessarily use that as a tea. You can make a bath out of it, just like you can make a cedar bath for cleansing. So what you can do is, if you have access to a tub, you can put the outside, actually it's the inner bark of the aspen trees in the water, and use that as a soak. So that's going to help draw out some of that sickness, sweat out some of that sickness, but it works to reduce the fever. So that's one that I know was used a long time ago. I remember seeing it being used in the horse trough. So those are some of the old techniques.
Hey, Hope, I was just going to
Yes.
let you know real quick that you got about 5-6 minutes for the rest of your presentation, and then we'll try to do about 10 minutes of questions. So just
Okay.
a quick reminder.
Okay, I'm an old person, so I'm not super good with technology. Some of you might see that. It's like, what? She's gone again.
You're doing great, Hope.
Oh, thank you. They know that I struggle with this technology stuff. So
You're amazing, Hope.
Miigwech, thank you for saying that. But I know I'm like, oh no, take me back to where I'm supposed to be right now. I accidentally touched my screen. What I'd like to do is, oh, there it is. Yay, I'm so happy to see all of you. Now I can see you all. Yay! What a gift that is. Oh my gosh. Now I don't feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay. I'm just so thankful to get the response of people being interested in the plants and getting that heartfelt reaction of wanting to be in connection with the plants. That just gives me a lot of joy and hope to think that you all are thinking like that. So I'm going to encourage you to not give up on it. Sometimes you might say, oh, I only know a dandelion. Dandelion has a lot of good to it. You can eat the leaves. You can make a tea out of the root. I mean, even though that one isn't even a native plant, don't ever just say, oh, it's just an old plant. It's an old weed. No such thing as a weed. Every single plant has its gift. So maybe you want to spend some time with it and say, what is your gift? Find out what it wants to offer. Sometimes you'll see, oh my gosh, it looks like it's just an old weed. In fact, that first one that I showed you, I know often gets eradicated. You're like, what? Why would you want to get rid of this beautiful plant that offers this gift? But it's sometimes it's like it's holding its secret. We've got to do the work to find out what is the gift. So that's part of the process of walking through that, spending time with the plants. I'm very grateful that I've had this chance to be working with Dream Wild Health. I hope that you all continue to connect with us. I'm really excited that we have our new property, and I've been very honored to work with Jessika Greendeer, our seed keeper, and now our lead farmer. We've done quite a bit of work over the years, kind of change, sort of expanding the vision so that now the way the farm is set up, the original 10 acres at the very back, we have a little wild area that plants can come in from the woods. So we do have like a wild bean called hog peanut that lives back there. And then we have a pollinator meadow to encourage the native bees. Because of the toxins that are in the environment, the honeybees aren't doing well. We used to have honeybees, but they kept dying off. And so now we're asking the native bees to take their place. So if you're encouraging native bees, make sure you have native pollinators, because that's going to multiply the life around you, the types of birds that'll show up, the types of insects. A lot of our native plants have one single native pollinator that's connected to them. So we have to be mindful. If we lose one of those pollinators, we lose that particular medicine, and we lose that particular animal that's connected to that plant too. So we've got to be mindful of how this is all connected. So in the farm, we have our pollinator meadow. We get that assessed by the Xerxes Society to make sure that it's as healthy as possible for the native pollinators that are living in the ground and overwintering in the stalks, and that we're producing enough food so that they can pollinate the rest of the land too, so they can be coming and surviving. Right after that, we have our indigenous orchard, where we have like pin cherries, choke cherries, We have one buffalo berry. We have wild plums, June berries. We have a lot of, and on both sides we have hazelnuts. So we're looking at what do we need to grow to have a healthy system. Now, if you're planting a native orchard, you know it takes time for those plants to get large enough to produce a volume of food. So it's usually, you know, a few years. I mean, we're talking maybe 5 years before you get a volume of food. After our orchard, we have a strip where we have quite a bit of the compost. So anything that's not used go back into the compost pile, and then we can use that. We don't use any pesticides, herbicides. We use compost from our own area, but also from Prairie Island compost, but it's particularly focused on like turkey poop. So trying to keep it as natural as earthly possible. In front of that, we have our vegetable garden that the young people work, as well as our farmers, our hard working farmers. And we also have our seed producing area that Jessica is going to be talking about. So Jessica has a beautiful understanding that this gift of the farm came from our elders, and a particular elder named Cora Baker was a Potawatomi elder that held and passed on 200, I believe, varieties of seeds, different kinds of tribal corn, beans, squash, watermelons, tobacco. These seeds were passed on to us to watch over. So that's our job too. When we're doing this, we also want to make sure that other Native people have access to these, because as you'll hear, and is so true for both wild plants and non-wild plants, you could have two that look exactly the same. Maybe you have a kernel of corn in this hand and a kernel of corn in this hand, and maybe you can't tell the difference between the two. Well, one might be just corn syrup and GMO herbicides, and the other might be full of niacin and protein and all sorts of positive things for your body. So being mindful of what we give our foods, our plants, on how they can survive, that's an important piece. We also have I have a little medicine area where I check out to see who's coming and who's leaving with climate change. So if you keep your eyes open, really notice which ones can't take what's happening with influxes of water or excessive heat. So just being careful about who is it that can take this? Who is it, as far as the plants go, that can't take this? You might go, why does she keep saying who? She's talking about plants. Well, in the Ojibwe language, plants are living beings just as much as I'm a living being. So that's how you say it in the language, is who is this? And when you talk about an insect, you say, who is this? Or when you talk about a tree, who is this? So our old way of thinking has it embedded in the language, but it embedded in the thought process of how do we relate to these vitally important plants, insects, trees, crops. It's right in the language. So when we do this, when we think about, oh, gee, I'm talking about this little one over there that is connected to that little one over there. Maybe it's a bee, you know, but that bee might be the one thing that keeps my life awake and alive, and keeps my life going. I always tell the kids, when you take a spoonful of food, you go 1, 2, and on the third one you say, miigwech, you say thank you. You've got to thank an insect for every third bite of food that you take. So being mindful of that, like keep your stalks up. Don't be like mowing down your stalks right away. This past week was the first time I started seeing the Hymenoptera, the flies and the native bees that help keep our crops pollinated. You start to learn about, well, okay, corn is wind pollinated, squash is insect pollinated, beans are self-pollinated. So looking at the particular plants that keep us alive and how do they stay alive, because that's our job, is to watch over them, to make sure that they're strong and healthy so that the young ones coming up can be strong and healthy. Do I still have a minute left?
Well, I was just kind of waiting for you to wrap up. I know that you were in the middle of your train of thought there, so I would never interrupt.
Oh, thank you all for listening. I hope I gave you a little food for thought. I'm so thankful that people are considering this, are thinking about those plants out there. And there's so many. There's so many. If you get started on this journey of learning about plants, it won't stop. Because every little biome, there's entirely different new plants. So the gifts are all around us. Even if you go to a vacant lot near your house, or even to a park, you go like, oh, look at that little poor little one that's trying to struggle to grow. Be thankful for it, because it's coming to be with us and give us the gift of breath. Aha, miigwech bizendawiyeg. That means thanks for listening, and I can't wait to hear what Jessica has to say too. I'm so grateful that you all are on this journey, that we're on this together, that we can feel each other on this journey and support each other on this journey. Aha, thank you. This is one of the things that's really dear to my heart, is that I wouldn't start learning plants with roots because a lot of roots are challenging. You're probably going to want to look for leaves, but the first one that I showed was this one right here. It kind of looks like a carrot, but when you look inside, it's really yellow. So the Ojibwe name for this one is Ozawajibik, which means yellow root. The English name for this is curly dock. It's very common, and it usually likes waste places. Like even if you go to a place where they're, like a rock pile or something, like that's where, I started seeing a lot of it this year, was at the rock piles. The leaves are delicious. You can make a pie out of it. It's really mucilaginous. It helps clean out your body. Of course, I can only talk about the plants here in Minnesota, and we're here in Minneapolis. Wherever you're going to go, the plants are going to be different. So just be conscientious about that. Trying to think of what I talked about next. This one right here is Maingwake. It means it makes one a wolf. It looks almost like it's a powerful one. It's for tea and for burning. The English name for this is Angelica. It needs clean, cold water. It draws in animals. Grizzly bears love this. If you ever go up in Alaska, they'll be looking for this. Wolves like this too. Deer too. I mean, if you're a deer hunter, if they smell it, sometimes they'll come towards you if you carry this. This one here is balsam poplar buds. Real strong smell to them. Manatzadi is the Ojibwe name for it. They're ready right now. They're going to be done pretty quick. The balsam poplar buds. I didn't mention this one, but this is the cottonwood buds. They're just about done too. This is a good one for pain relief. So yeah, we do have cottonwoods in this area as well as the balsam poplar. This is the chaga zugatagan. Grows on mature birch trees that have been injured. That's an immune support. I didn't show this one, but this is one that's really powerful. This is one that's used for a cleaning right now, but it needs to dry or it's toxic. A lot of our super strong plants would be considered toxic if they're not handled right. That one is used for making a person do their spring cleaning, make the upways and the downways. But some of us are really focused on that, especially the traditional folks. I've been hearing quite a bit about it's important to do your spring cleaning, clean out your system all the way, because that's what's causing us to not be able to cough this out of our lungs. Did I miss any? There's a bunch here. One thing I want to like warn people about is make sure you got the right thing. People have been asking about turkey tail. Turkey tail for, that's another good immune support mushrooms. So here's a false turkey tail, a true turkey tail, and then another one that's often mistaken as a turkey tail. This is a velvet polypore. So they're not really, this really isn't the prime time to pick those. You should wait till probably midsummer to start really looking for those. But there's hundreds of them. They all have a gift. So don't ever feel like, oh gee, I've mastered it. Not possible. They're wonderful. You can put them in bear fat. For some people call just that minigan or minoigan. That's the Ojibwe term for it is a good thing. And you can use it as a salve for skin issues like psoriasis and all things like that. But if you put it in that bear fat, you can also use it as a, like, just as like a plaster. Like, if you ever heard of the what do you call it, that one, there's a medicine that you put on your chest to relieve congestion. You can put it on there, it soaks in. That's a cup plant. This is a prairie plant. It's really, you know, roots are, I never realized how signature based they are, but this has all sorts of interesting little avenues you can go travel through that shows you that it's, I do believe in the doctrine of signature, that the plants, they're so kind. They even try to give us hints of what they're useful for. Some people say, ah, that's bogus, but it just happens all the time. So this is for clearing airways, clearing those little vessels. You can burn it, you can make a tea out of it. You see it? It's a prairie plant called a cup plant. Nowhere. It's hard. That's why this past week, I took 2 of our youth from our Dream Wild Health program out to show them how to find it, because it's not an easy one. The reason why it's so hard, I'm going to tell you straight up, is because they cut down birch trees before they get big enough. So the timber companies, they go out there and they harvest the birch trees when they're just teeny babies. So you're not going to get those medicines. That's why if you think that other way, we're going to lose out on our medicines. So you have to find a place that the timber companies haven't, or the paper companies, or whoever is harvesting out there, they're cutting down all the decent sized birch trees that are able to support chaga. So that's what the problem is. It's, you've got to look and look and look and find places where the timber companies haven't chopped down the decent sized birch trees. And then what happens is the birch trees have to have an injury, and then they're sending their medicine to fight off that injury. So they're sending it's a chemical called betulum for healing, and then it gets trapped in the fungus. So the fungus is collecting that betulum and traps it and holds it. And then if you gather it, make sure you leave the root of the chaga or the root of the zugatagan so it can regrow. Because some people, I just checked 2 places where I was keeping it as a demonstration site, and both places, whoever gathered it, chopped a big old chunk out of the tree. So there's no way that chaga can grow back. So if I'm showing young people how to do it, I'm going to say leave all the roots around it so it can grow back. It takes a fraction of the time for it to grow back. So you've got to find birch trees. It grows on black, yellow, and white birch. Some people say that the yellow and black is much, much stronger than the white, but the white is very strong. So it's good stuff. It's just a matter of finding healthy, large birch that have not been cut down. You know, as a group, we've got a lot of wonderful people in this circle. Go out and promote these ideas. Please don't cut down the baby birch trees. Please keep the air clean. Please keep the food clean. Please keep the water clean. Whatever you all as a group can do to do those things, it's going to help all of us. Not just me, not just you, but all of us. Let's work together.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, we can hear you okay, Jessica.
Perfect, thank you. All right, and I do have a little bit of slides available for everybody, so we don't have to take a walk and look for everything at this, or take a walk around. Not that that wouldn't be fun, but you might get a little dizzy and seasick. But good morning. My name is Jessika Greendeer. I'm a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation. I'm the seed keeper and farm manager at Dream of Wild Health. I have been at Dream of Wild Health since last January, so a little over a year, and it's been a beautiful season so far, and I'm looking forward to growing with all of you in the future. I do want to mention that Hope is a hard act to follow, so thank you, Hope, for presenting. And you had a lot of great teachings that I'm still going to continue to build on in this presentation as Hope, speaks, provides a voice for our wild relatives, and I try to listen to our domesticated ones. We're here to talk about how to start a garden, and generally speaking, if we were able to do this training in person, we would be doing plantings together and getting everyone more familiar with what they were going to be doing at home, but that's okay. We're still going to make it happen. And I'm here to make sure that you don't leave here with any questions, because it's so important, not only that I'm growing food and that other people are growing food, but that we all need to do this. This is something that will help not only during this time, but also for moving forward. It'll help reduce your grocery costs. It allows you to have a relationship with the earth and the different plants that you ingest on a regular basis. But it also gives you that time out in the sun. Vitamin D is always good. Right, so we have for garden planning, what you want to do when you start your garden is you want to find out what it is that you grow. What is it that you spend your money on, your food dollars on every week to buy different foods to bring into your home? When you look at those, you also want to see if it's something that you can grow. Maybe you eat a pineapple a week, and at least in our little region of the world would be extremely difficult to do without the help of extra power, maybe greenhouses, but then thinking about the environmental toll and cost that it would make to grow something like that on a regular basis. Additionally, when you're looking at your foods, you want to make sure you also have things that you can preserve for later consumption. So maybe you consume a lot of lettuce on a daily or weekly basis, but lettuce is a very difficult crop to be able to preserve for into the winter. So garden siting, finding your garden site is extremely important. You want to have a spot that actually hits the sun, but more importantly, you want to have a spot that you're actually going to see every day. When you have a garden maybe on the backside of a property, it's sort of that out of sight, out of mind thing. And so you want to make sure that it's something that you're going to see, and you know that those plants are going to need some love or maybe need some water or weeding. So keep it in a place where you have a regular eye line on it. And when you do find this area, you also want to ensure that there's more than 6 hours of sunlight that hits that area. So although we have some shade-loving crops, we also have a lot of crops that we consume on the regular that require more than 6 hours, or at least 6 hours of daylight, sunlight a day. With that being said, I know a lot of our local relatives here need to do container-sized gardening, and that could be because they don't have the soil or the earth to work with, or maybe there's soil contamination where you're at. Container gardenings, you can also produce a lot of food out of the containers if done correctly. If you are looking at an in-home, in-ground garden, you'll want to know what type of soil you have. And soil, everybody has different soil, and you can go on the, for everybody in the US, we can look at the web survey on the soil conservation site, and you can put in your address and find out what type of soil you had. I will say that this information is slightly out of date, as that when the soil surveys were coming through, maybe the last time your site was surveyed was back in the 70s. So things have changed, but it'll give you at least a baseline to work from. And for the size of the garden, I'm not sure how many people have gardened in the past, or if it's with the current situations of why people want to start a garden, but you always want to start small. Like a 10 by 10 garden is still a decent sized garden, and even slightly more than that if you were to plant more to like a set 10 by 16 foot garden. That'll easily feed a family of 4, also giving you some leftover harvest to preserve for the winter. All right, so we have some very low tech and low cost options. I know there's some people who regularly start their gardens out of a milk jug, which is super easy and super cheap. It allows you to reuse some of your plastic, and good for you if you can drink milk. But the the low tech option is actually to purchase a bag of garden soil, and you can cut an opening in the top and be able to directly plant some of your vegetables directly into that, and that would allow you to move it to wherever you need to if you needed to place it on a deck for more sunlight, or what have you. But that's the lowest, I think, the lowest cost involved. So there's several different types of container gardens. This is just an example of a few of them. They can be anything you want. I know when I was a kid, I grew up watching MacGyver. So you would have, you know, like a stick of gum and a paper clip, and then you would create something. So, you know, I don't want, you have full creative license to decide what type of containers you want to use, how artistic you want to be with it, how creative you want to be with it, as long as you're able to grow something. Right, and moving into the in-ground and raised beds. In-ground is probably the easiest, especially if you have a tiller or you have a broad fork where you're able to move the earth and create spaces. The raised beds, you get into more of the purchasing of the lumber as well as the soil or compost that you're using to fill it. On the right side, we have a pallet garden. The pallets, you know, generally you can find places that will offer pallets for free. And the only thing I'm going to say about the pallet gardens is you want to ensure that when you look at it, it has an HT on the side, it's almost like a cattle branding on the actual pallet itself. The HT designates it that it was a heat treated lumber. So then you're not going to have extra chemicals leaching into your soil and leaching into your food. All right, so planning your garden for seed saving. Essentially, you're going to want to ensure that you follow all the other things, you know, looking at where your sunlight is, a good spot on your property or in your yard where you're gonna easily see something. And the things that you won't find in books. Moving on to the cultural considerations for seed saving. Seed saving isn't just about collecting seeds from a wild or a domesticated plant to be able to plant inside your own home, in your yard, or move it to other places. We have to remember that, like Hope was talking about us, you know, the plants are our older brothers and older sisters, and being respectful of them, of where they are and where they want to be. And we have to remember that we have to walk a very delicate balance, and being very respectful about the seeds that we decide that we want to grow, and want to grow. I don't want to say want to grow, but maybe want to grow with. You know, like you are starting a relationship with that particular plant, whether it's a vegetable or a fruit or an herb. You're asking to be a part of their life, and in turn, you're a part of their life. Seed saving to me is motherhood. our plants, you know, they're much older and wiser than we are, but, you know, in a sense, I refer to them as babies, because I know there's probably very few people who um, know that when they're going to pick up a baby, that they'll calm themselves, they'll wash their hands, they'll make sure that their hands are warmed up before they pick up a baby on a cold day. There's a different energy that comes over you when you think about that seed as a baby and how you want to take care of it. These seeds will be here longer than any of us. You know, hopefully they'll outlive us, and hopefully the seed work will outlive us. But it's being mindful of that, and I encourage all of you, if you know, you have to find your own type of ceremony with seed saving and working with the plants. I know we recently had a thunderstorm come in, and the thunders woke up the seeds, and the seeds are ready. They're ready to go back and do exactly what is written in their blueprint or their design for their life. You know, they come to this earth to grow, to reproduce, and to nourish not only themselves but also the earth. And it's such a beautiful relationship to be a part of. And, you know, like thinking about your garden in the sense of children, maybe you just start with 5 different types of crops that you plan to grow this year, just to try it out and just to get familiar with each of those plants. And sometimes you'll have a plant that you're like, you know what, I just don't like the taste of this. And that's okay, it happens, but maybe there's somebody else you can share that seed with, so that way they can benefit from it too. And essentially the most important thing is, you know, we're in a very different time right now. A lot of things have changed in the worlds around us, but like those seeds are there for us, and this is definitely the time that we all need to get back into the relationship with not only the seeds but also our relationship with the earth. Being a responsible farmer and grower, we always ask permission of the earth before we till her, before we disturb her, because we're asking to place a seed into her womb and for her to help nourish that seed and give us exactly what our bodies need and what our families need for when we harvest that plant later in the season. All right, so the things you can learn in books. Again, you want to start small. When you're starting out as a seed keeper or a seed grower, you want to start with something that's a self-pollinating plant. So beans, peas, and lettuce are really good self-pollinators, and this is something you can just come and watch your pollinators visit your garden, and they'll do all the work for you. You also, for beans and peas, for instance, they're always going to stay the same size. So whether you're planting it for fresh eating or for seed saving, you can take that bean and it'll take up the exact same amount of space as it would have as a harvested plant. For something like a lettuce, you might have a 12-inch spacing around your lettuce head. But if you're allowing that lettuce to go to seed, it's going to need 18 inches. So thinking about that spacing and keeping it in mind as you're planting. But this is where everybody becomes their own plant breeder. You get to decide what it is that you are selecting for. Maybe you're checking to see which plant is going to emerge first from your garden. And maybe that's the type of seed that you're looking to keep. Maybe it's how bushy and how large a lettuce leaf can be, and you decide you want to save seeds from there. But the biggest thing you want to check for is also taste testing. So with lettuce, for example, you can take a piece of the lettuce, taste it, and if it's something that you really like, then hold on to it and let it go to seed. If it's not, then keep going. You always want to make sure it's something that you're going to eat, so nothing is wasted in the future. If you are looking to challenge yourself with some cross-pollinating varieties, you can definitely look at squash, where it's something that you can hand pollinate your squash, and it's something that you can see. I know later this season we'll be offering a hand pollination workshop in the summer. So if you do decide to grow squash, maybe that's something you can check into in the future. And as you continue to grow with the seeds, you'll start to see what you like, what your family likes, and you can grow more of that, but you can also share different seeds that you have with your neighbors, maybe with an elder down the street. So thinking of ways that you can help spread the wealth. I know my mentor does this quite often in her home. She has basically a seed bowl. And so what she does is her and her family, maybe they're eating a watermelon, they'll spit all of their seeds from the watermelon into that bowl so they can save the seeds for planting again. Another thing you could do is with a tomato. I think most of us are pretty familiar with the seeds of the tomato. The tomato does require a wet fermentation, which we can talk about at another class opportunity if there's interest. So I had been taught that planting with the moon, thinking of the tide of the moon, how the moon, the waxing of the moon will change the tide of the waters on the earth. And we also remember that the earth, even within the soil, has moisture within her. And so as the tide comes in or rises with the waxing of the moon, then you also have more moisture coming up toward the soil's surface, the surface of the soil. When we place our seeds into there, those seeds are also being nourished by the moisture within the earth. And so planting with the moon, I know when I first learned about it, I was a little skeptical, but I had to try it myself and see what had happened. For one instance, planting with the full moon, there was one corn that she ended up being, the cob was 12 inches long versus a cob that I had planted in the different cycle of the moon where it was half that size. And so thinking about just one corn cob, if you were able to grow 20 corn plants, and if you had 12-inch cobs versus 6-inch cobs, how much more food you'd be able to not only share and save, but also ensuring that we're sharing with our wildlife brothers and sisters. So this is just a schedule for something that would be what you would be doing in April, or the month of April. Starting with the 6th and 7th, we can plant corn, melon, squash, tomatoes, and other above ground crops that flower. So these plants, when you put them in, I want everybody to remember too that not only is this, especially for those of you who are joining us from Canada, this isn't necessarily, it's still too cold for us to get our transplanted started. I understand that, but it also has the same effect with soil starters. So when you do get your flats or milk jugs or whatever containers started, this still applies for any type of soil. And then after we start hitting the waning of the moon or waning of the full moon, you can work on seed beds. It's good days for transplanting, but also looking at your below or root crops. And a similar schedule can be found within the Farmer's Almanac, but there are tons of resources out there if it's something that you do want to try. Of course, weather or life circumstances doesn't always favor us being able to follow these to a T every single day. But thinking of trying to get back in tune with nature, not only the earth, but the moon, will allow you to have be able to take advantage of the days that are meant to be used for these certain processes. And then moving into the second part of April, thinking about the poor planting days or breaking ground or cultivating, you'll still want to ensure that you're looking at the weather. It's not a good idea to be breaking ground, especially when it's muddy or it's recently rained, as that can also help compact the soil underneath the tractor or any other type of tillage equipment. That includes even walking within your garden. So even footsteps will compact the soil. And for those people who are interested more on like other possible tasks or jobs that you could be doing throughout the moon cycle, you can even check out biodynamic agriculture. And this will allow you to get a better understanding of different ideas for how you can take care of your garden. There's lots of interesting things out there, and I encourage you to, if you do have the time to read, to be able to get reconnected with some of this plant work, just as our ancestors had done in the past. All right, so we're going to start talking about growing seeds indoors. And I know we talked about I know it was in the media for quite some time about the toilet paper issue, or the toilet paper shortage. If you happen to have toilet paper rolls, empty ones, you can also use these for starting your seeds. So again, talking about our relationship with the earth, we want to make sure that we've asked permission, and we also prayed upon what it is that we're asking for. We're asking the earth to help us in being able to nourish the seeds that our ancestors grew. And yeah, it's if you're able to pour tobacco or whatever other type of offerings you have, if you could do that before you get started. But if you were to purchase a bag of soil at the hardware store, you'd want to look for something that is OMRI approved. It says OMRI. And OMRI approved products generally don't have a whole lot of extra fillers in it. And that's soil that's approved for organic production. So it's not perfectly safe, but it's the best option that you have to try and get the cleanest soil for your transplants. So what you do is you'll take your soil medium, you'll add some water, and what you can do then is you mix everything so there's a lot of moisture within the soil. You can actually clump it and wring it out. And from there, you can, you'll be able to see if there's drippings coming out of there. If there's not, it means that it's good to work with. If you have an easier place to, a place that you don't mind getting some soil spilt on, you can tap the soil ball in your hand. And if it starts breaking apart, it's perfect. It's ready to work with. Right, so this is the toilet paper roll pot. You'll take your toilet paper roll, you'll cut it in half with a scissors or a knife. And this is probably a great activity for the kids if you're running out of things for them to do. But after you take your half part of toilet paper, you'll take a small clipping, so essentially like a third of the toilet paper, what's left, and you'll make 4 cuts, one in each of the directions, so equal parts of 4. From there, you can fold over the bottom, and voila, you have soil, a soil pot. So within that soil pot, you can see that I didn't fill it all the way to the top. These soil pots are getting ready to get planted. So you'll want to leave a little bit of space on top for you to be able to drop the seed on and then sprinkle some more soil on top of it after you're done planting. Right, and eggshells or egg carton pots, I think many people have seen these before. The eggshells, essentially the same thing. You're filling them up to just below the top. You can then put them back into the egg carton for them to, easy way for them to stand up. And it's actually a bonus if you have a plastic one because it can double as a greenhouse carrier almost. And then alternatively, if you don't have the eggshells, you can also put soil within the egg carton. So I know there has been challenges with getting seeds from different seed houses, as there's almost not, I don't want to say a limited supply, but thinking of ways that you can grow food without spending money on buying seeds. You of course want to ensure that you start with an organic food scrap, but it can be any other food that you know how it was grown. So these are some of the vegetables that can regrow in water. You can put them in a small glass with some water inside of a window or on a windowsill. But you essentially will change the water if you need to, and you'll notice as the water starts going down that you'll need to re-add or move the scrap into another cup or container and change the water. When you do start seeing these growths after approximately 4 days, you can take those and actually put them back into a soil so you can continue to grow and give them food and nutrients from the earth. All right, carrot tops, you won't be able to grow a carrot back. A carrot won't magically reappear inside your water. So just a heads up, however, you can grow carrot sprouts. And so the carrot greens, it's even if you were thinning your carrots inside of your garden, you can take all of those little baby greens and make a salad. You can also turn it into an amazing pesto, but you don't want to eat too many carrot greens because they can have a diuretic effect. But that's a lot of carrot greens to get that type of effect. All right, so as you're cooking, you may have a couple extra onion bottoms. So when you're slicing your onion and you find the root side of the onion, you can drop that in a little bit of soil, cover it, and as soon as it starts sprouting through the soil, you can put it out in your garden. Right, so I know regrowing vegetables is really fun, especially with the kids, because it's something that they can see and something they can watch on a daily basis, or they're helping take care of and water them. But this, depending on the soil, depending on the earth that you're planting them into, you need to ensure that you're feeding the soil and not feeding the plant. So I encourage all of you, I know you may have tuned into this section to become a gardener, but we have to remember that we're soil builders and soil partners with the earth. So make sure that your soil looks good, is healthy, and that way you know that you're still getting all the nutritional value that you need from your food scrap garden. All right, can you see me again?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so it's been a very exciting time. I've been a firm believer that you don't need to have a farm to be able to grow food, and this is an opportunity for everybody to start getting back to the earth, even if it means a small container windowsill garden. But there are lots of ways for us to get involved. This is another opportunity for all of us to remember about about sharing with one another. I think somebody else had mentioned, maybe it was Hope, that this is a time of just like a disease of greed, and thinking of coming back into the way that we were meant to, the way of our ancestors. You know, it takes a village to be able to live healthy and thrive. And if you are able to save seeds this season, or you have saved seeds to grow, I really encourage you to be able to share some of those with an elder. And maybe your yard isn't equipped to have a garden, or maybe a garden as large as you would like, but it's talking about sharing that maybe the person across the street has an amazingly sunny yard, but you can still grow some shaded crops. Maybe some lettuces will grow really well in your property, and you're able to swap tomatoes for lettuce with a neighbor. But, you know, it's incredibly important that we all work with the earth in our own way. Maybe you're out foraging, and maybe your hands are in the soil, working with the earth, helping nurture some of our plant relatives along so that they can nourish us in the future. I know I can speak from firsthand experience. I know that there's a lot of healthy microbiological stuff and life going on below the surface of the soil that's incredibly healing. And I continue to be amazed with Mother Earth on how nourishing, how she continues to nourish us, even with all of the extractive activities happening on her around the world. And, this is a time for us to work on ourselves, improve ourselves, and improve our ways of life. But I encourage all of you to be able to help in any way that you can. So anytime you have a closed plastic container, you'll want to be able to punch a couple holes in the bottom, whether it's with a very small drill bit to punch them through, or maybe a screw, but something to allow the water to drain out of. That's a great question. And I haven't had the same problem with cats before. However, I will say that any type of vining squash, so like your winter squashes, they will, like I think we've all maybe touched a cucumber or a squash and they've got the prickly vines. I would recommend planting those around the corner, around the outsides of the garden, and hopefully that'll help deter your cats from coming into the garden. But you'll definitely want to clean the top layer of the soil off before you get started. No, you don't. And actually, it's a whole lot easier to plant one type of squash, or one out of each family of squash. So maybe you have a zucchini, a butternut, and a Hubbard squash that you're planting. The three of those will be able to grow by themselves. Let's say you had two different types of winter squash that you wanted to grow. That's when you would need to be doing even more hand pollination, because trying to keep both varieties true to their own type. So you could start with simply just one winter squash, a butternut and a zucchini, and none of them will cross-pollinate. But the hand pollination, it's easier to see when you have that large bloom. So a lot of our winter squash relatives have almost like a 2 or 3 inch bloom on them, where you can actually see all of the reproductive areas of the squash and know when you have a male and a female flower. There's, I know there's a couple different examples out there. You can definitely Google it and check it out. I know a farmer from my hometown creates her own calendar, and actually shows like all the different activities for every single day. And that's the 4 Elements Medicinal Farm in Wisconsin. But there are lots of free samples out there. So I'd encourage you to check it out. But Farmer's Almanac is also a decent decent calendar to check out. So if you're planting by the moon, in Southern California, you're probably already able to plant outside, but you'll want to not only check to see what your growing zone is, you can do that through the USDA and find out when your frost-free planting time is, and then line it up with the moon so you'll know whether you're planting inside or outside. I know here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, we're doing some planting in the greenhouse already. So if you do have greenhouse capabilities, you can definitely have a longer season than planting straight outside. That's a very interesting question. I apologize. I've never saved seeds from bok choy, but I can recommend that if you are looking for other references to be able to check to see how you can save seeds, you can also visit Seed Savers Exchange for their seed-to-seed garden, and they will outline even spacing requirements while planting your garden, as well as different processes for different crops. I think it depends on what tribal nation you follow, and what their protocols are. I know there have been times that women have planted, but they know that that crop isn't going to maybe some different ceremonies. So it's being able to know exactly where that corn specifically, where that corn is going to end up going. And when you don't know that, you can always have a friend help you plant if it's something that, something that's prohibited by your cultural protocols. Good question. The best places to get your seeds, there's actually multiple places. So not only maybe there's ancestral seeds that are grown in your community, you could reach out to people within your own community because they're already regionally adapted to where you're located and where you're planting. But additionally, you could, there are some seed drives going on, and the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network is hosting a seed drive, and essentially sending folks a small care package of seeds with the three sisters and friends. So some of the other sisters who can be planted within the three sisters garden plots. And, I think if you do have free resources, you should take advantage of it. But I would look at it, wanting to, like not only with the seeds that we're working with, but also the earth, what type of fertilizers or chemicals or any other additives have been added to the soil would be of a concern. So I think talking to them and finding out what their growing practices have been would help you identify if that was a good spot to get your soil from. Lots of ways to know about soil. If it's a place that you have been able to look at, maybe you were eyeing it up last year, and a couple of the tall tale signs of, I guess what people will call weeds, will help give an idea of the soil health. So I know around this area, we'll have lamb's quarter. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with lamb's quarter, but that weed, purslane, the two of them, when they pop up, you know that you have fertile soil or healthy soil. So that's one of the giveaways from looking at that. If you're able to get out in your yard today and sort of just poke around and look to see what's going on, our plant relatives usually tell you where there's better soil. And every weed is actually associated with a vegetable family as well. So maybe you have a nightshade like volunteer come up or weed come up. You know that if you were to plant tobacco, I apologize, not tobacco, tomatoes, or even peppers, that nutrient the nutrient levels that those families require is already within the soil.
Thinking about prayer, you know, that's what tobacco is. It's the, if you want to think of it this way, I know I've heard it described as it's the way to communicate with the spirits, is the vehicle for getting that connection with the creator and the spirits. So usually it's not a community, to me, it's not a community event. I do it every day by myself. A lot of what I'm doing is by myself, so it doesn't have to be a community challenge. There's so many different kinds of tobaccos. There's the tobacco, like I mentioned earlier about, there's the seeds that have been passed on through the tribal ways. The different tribes often have had those seeds for thousands of years, and it usually was raised man to son, the man to son, but sometimes uncle to nephew that way as well. You'd ask your tribe about that. If you don't have access to that, there's also too what we call stick tobacco, or the old style like chanchasha, which, or miscobeamish is the inner bark of the red willow, is what was used around this area. You might want to ask tribal members or elders what they used. You can use a food offering if you don't have access to any tobacco. The concept of is, you wouldn't use like food, oh, I don't want this food, this is the leftovers on my plate. You're using what you truly value as your gift, because you're not thinking, oh, I don't want this. You're thinking, this is my connection to you all. Some people will use commercial tobacco. If you do that, it's a reminder, it's a physical reminder every day to be thankful, because when you're being thankful, you're drawing those gifts to you. That healing is coming to you. So it's not something you're doing to show off. It's not something you're doing to say, you know, I have this particular power. It's nothing about that. It's about establishing that connection and your gratitude for the gifts that you're getting each day. This morning, Neely, our director here at Dream Wild Health, she had put an envelope in my PO, my box, my little mailbox, with a tobacco tie in there. I thought, boy, that was smart. So, you know, there are ways, just thinking about like how to do this, how to make this a real effort. I'm not into this virtual tobacco thing. It just, again, it is sort of trying to circumvent the earth and our traditional ways. And I don't think there's any circumventing about it, you know? So I really appreciate that, you know, just say, put it in my mailbox, put it on my front step, put it on my, underneath my windshield wiper, you know. Maybe if you could talk to them and say, I'm wishing to do this. I know one of my teachers I went to visit 2 days ago, and we were able to, you know, stay away from each other, just like sit outside and discuss, you know, what was going on by maintaining that distance. And then, you know, I can put that tobacco down and pass it on. Speak to some of that. Oh, the easiest way is to use the existing roots. And this would not be, you know, you probably maybe want to wait another week just to make sure there's not a lot of more freezing going on. But what I've done in the past is, there's around here, there's quite a few wild areas that have sage, and you can see last year's stalks. So if you gather like in an area where, you know, you'd make sure you're not picking too much. That's one of the things you always want to make sure you're not really depleting the bed of sage, but you're taking some of that sage, make sure you get the roots. They're very, very shallow roots. So if you do that and then put it in a container like the ones Jessica was showing us, and transplant it, keep it moist, and then transplant it when you can. It's much harder to grow through seed, but you know, what sometimes people will call it female sage, it'll be like the sage heads or the sage seeds. if you strew them about, that sometimes will work, but it's a much longer process and not as sure to work.
Great question. What we do for those of you who have been able to go to Dream of Wild Health last year during the growing season, within the seed garden, we implemented lots of different other plant relatives that will help protect the garden. So not only were we using, we had the three sisters growing, but we also had sunflowers, additional squash bordering the garden, marigolds, lavender, and yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. We use several different things and different tactics. We have to remember that all of the teachings that we have from our plant relatives are also, it's not just for us. We need to also feed our insect and wildlife relatives too. Like I have this corn in front of me. So if you were to look at this corn and take the corn into thirds, this top third is for our plants or our insects and wildlife. This would be for what we're going to grow for seed again, and this is for the people. And so if you remember living back into balance with, with us not being the top of a pyramid, we can try to live, we can all coexist together in the same spot. So I would see if there were things that your grasshoppers are eating. If they're eating something, I would do a little bit more research and find what grasshoppers want to eat. And maybe you're able to plant that around your garden and help still feed them, but keeping them away from some of the things that you hope to eat.
Thank you, Jessica. I want to mirror what she's saying here. If you were to go to Oaxaca, Mexico, where quite a few of it's a cradle of so many life forms, but you'll see that at the markets there, they have different grades of grasshoppers as a food source. So, and they have all different sizes, flavors. I mean, we don't ever want to discredit our insect relatives. If you say, in Ojibwe, you say manidunsag, the little spirits. That's how you say insects. So you certainly don't want to be just wiping out the little spirits. They're here for a reason too. Grasshoppers serve as pollinators as well to some plants. So be mindful of that.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming and joining us today. I know we have lots of knowledge, not only that Hope and I are sharing, but from those of you who were participants. So I wanted to give a shout out too to Barry and some other folks who've been also helping to answer some questions in the chat. Just stay hopeful, stay healthy. We have a lot to live for and a lot to look forward to. And we're going to do this by getting stronger and being able to go back to the lifestyles of our ancestors. And I can't wait to see you all in person, but I know we are trying to do a couple more online workshops throughout the season. So that way you can come and check us out. We'll make sure that we get those announcements out there so we're still sharing throughout the season. Thank you.
As I said earlier, it's so beautiful to be out there in the natural world, and that beautiful gift that the Creator has given us and the spirits are supporting us, and that we see all these magnificent plants, and every day a different one shows itself. So the knowledge, I mean, there's so much that this earth is so freely giving to us. As I've been hearing lately that this time was predicted. If you listen to the prophecies, they've been talked about, that this time was clearly known to be coming. We knew that we were going to have to be looking at what are our old ways, what are our old teachings. It was so important, and still is even more important than ever, to look at how we are united here as life forms. I love this teaching in the language. It says, Niji b'madazik, our fellow living beings. So as we see each other face to face, but every single one of us as a fellow living being. You know, I think of that, and I'm so grateful for that, because I know I don't create oxygen, I don't create food, I don't have that kind of power, you know. So every time we look at a fellow living being, like a plant or an insect or whatever we might find as fearful, just remind yourself that that's just our fears. If we can get rid of those and see the beauty and the gifts that each one of us brings to this earth, that each plant, each insect, each being that's on this earth brings a gift of beauty, and start to work on that spiritual growth as much as physical growth or food growth or emotional growth. This is such a beautiful time to look at finding some kind of balance, spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. So we have this respite, this time to reset and get right with what's truly, truly important. Spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, our wholeness for the whole planet. And that's that's up to us. So thank you for being a part of that. Just showing up today is taking a step in that direction, I feel like, and getting us all onto a page of remembering who we are as beings on a living planet with all our living relatives right beside us.